Let's talk about one of the most famous and maybe one of the most complicated true crime cases of our time, the case of Adnan Syed. After spending more than 2 decades behind bars, his story is this incredible maze of conviction, freedom, and just constant legal battles. It's a lot to unpack. So that's the big question, right? How does a person serving a life sentence in a case that millions of people have followed literally just walk out of prison a free man? Well, to figure that out, we have to go all the way back to the beginning. All right, let's set the scene. Before this was a global phenomenon, before the podcasts and the documentaries, this was a deeply personal tragedy that started in a Baltimore high school. So here's how it all went down really fast. January 1999, high school student Hae Min Lee is tragically murdered. Her ex-boyfriend, Adnan Syed, gets arrested. By February of 2000, boom, he's convicted and serving life plus 30 years. And for 14 years, that was pretty much it. The story was over. But then, 2014 happens. This podcast, Serial, drops, and it changes everything. It turns the case into this worldwide obsession and starts poking some serious holes in that conviction. The prosecution's case was actually pretty simple, and that's what made it so powerful. As the court documents put it, they sold the jury on the idea of a scorned lover. They said Adnan was heartbroken and angry after Hae broke up with him, and that's why he did it. That was the whole motive, and it was enough to put him away for life. But once you put a case like this under a microscope with millions of people watching, well, the evidence that looked so solid at first really starts to crack. So let's look at how the whole thing started to fall apart. Okay, first up, a potential alibi. A classmate named Asia McLean came forward and said in a sworn statement that she saw Adnan in the public library at the exact time the state said he was committing the murder. And get this, she said he seemed extremely calm. The craziest part? The original jury never heard a word about it. And then there was the physical evidence, the smoking gun, or so they thought, the cell tower data. The prosecution's big argument was that incoming calls to Adnan's phone pinged a cell tower near where Hae's body was found. But here's the kicker. The fine print from AT&T, the phone company itself, had a disclaimer. It basically said, hey, just so you know, only outgoing calls are reliable for location. Incoming calls? Not so much. The calls that put Adnan at the park? Yeah, they were all incoming. So with all this old evidence looking kind of shaky, investigators decided to turn to modern science. Years later, they took a bunch of items from the crime scene and sent them for new, super advanced DNA testing. We're talking crucial stuff like Hae Min Lee's fingernail clippings and rope found near her body. Everyone was hoping for that one definitive answer science could finally give them. But here's the twist. While the questionable evidence raised a ton of public doubt, the legal key that actually unlocked Adnan's prison cell wasn't some new DNA result. It was something else entirely. A huge legal error in the original prosecution called a Brady violation. So what the heck is a Brady violation? Think of it like this. In a trial, the prosecution has to play fair. They are constitutionally required to give the defense any evidence they find that might help the defendant's case, even if it just casts a little doubt. When they hide that evidence, that's a Brady violation, and it's a very, very big deal. And here's how it all played out in Adnan's case. Step 1. The evidence existed. Turns out prosecutors had handwritten notes about another suspect, someone who had actually threatened to kill Hae and make her disappear. Step 2. The state hid it. They kept those notes in their files and never, ever gave them to Adnan's lawyers. And step 3. It was material. I mean, this information was huge. It could have let the defense build a whole different case around another suspect. This was the bombshell that changed everything. So the Brady violation gets his conviction thrown out, but the legal fight still wasn't over. And this is where the story takes one last really unexpected turn, all thanks to a new law that had nothing to do with the murder and everything to do with his age. We have to remember this one critical number, 17. Adnan Syed wasn't a grown man when this happened. He was a kid, a high schooler. And what we know now, through modern science, is that a 17-year-old's brain is just fundamentally different from an adult's. And that brings us to this law, Maryland's Juvenile Restoration Act. It was passed in 2021, and it's based on that very idea that kids are different and have a better chance to be rehabilitated. It created a legal path for people who'd served at least 20 years for a crime they committed as a minor to ask a judge to take a second look at their sentence. So the judge had to do this incredible balancing act. On one side, you have Adnan's amazing record in prison. He completed 35 educational programs, showed he was ready to re-enter society, all the good stuff. But on the other side, you have the horrific nature of the crime itself, and of course, the incredibly powerful and painful testimony from Hae Min Lee's family. When all was said and done, the judge made a final decision. Adnan's sentence was reduced to time served. He wouldn't go back to prison. Instead, he'd be on supervised probation for 5 years. That decision officially closed the book on his criminal sentence.
But, a legal ending isn't always a human one. The conclusion of this saga left two completely different realities. For one person, it meant freedom and a new chapter. For another family, it just meant more pain and a continued fight to be heard.
And you can see that so clearly here. Adnan Syed is out, he's building a new life, he's working at Georgetown University. The judge even said sending him back to prison would be unproductive and unfair. But then you have the Lee family. For them, this has been a relentless nightmare. Their fight, as their lawyers said, has been for victims' rights, to make sure that they have a voice and can actually participate in a process that has turned their lives upside down. This quote from the judge's opinion really just says it all. Can you imagine? For over 2 decades, every single time the Lee family thought it might finally be over, something else would happen. Another appeal, another hearing, and it would just rip open those wounds all over again. There's been absolutely no peace for them. So, after all of it, the podcasts, the appeals, the reversals, where does that leave us? In a case this messy and this painful, what does justice even mean anymore? And that's really the question that hangs over everything. You have a conviction that is technically still on the books, but a sentence that's been fully served. You have evidence that's full of holes, but no new answers to fill in the gaps. It's a legal and emotional paradox. And it leaves us with the most important question of all. What does justice for Hae Min Lee actually look like now?